the feet, or it represents the Shudra Varna. Shudra Varna is basically service. And everything stands on that, just like my body and your body stands on our feet, right? So the feet, without feet, you cannot go anywhere, right? So for you to go anywhere, do anything, your feet are very important. I think mental arthritis is a much more severe problem than physical arthritis.
Today we talk about the science behind Hindu rituals and traditions, something that makes us recipients of hate, baseless ridicule, and more often than not, an underdeveloped defense because the practitioners of it usually don't know why they're doing it and therefore are doing it wrong. And in the most tragic of cases, fall into something that these rituals and traditions are far beyond, which is these tendencies like the fear of God or wanting something from God. And this reductionist understanding of our practices then makes us subject to derogatory terms like dot heads or doll worshippers or pagans and all sorts of things, which, of course, since our speaker comes from the US of A, has probably been on the receiving end of more often than not. The Hindu way of life, or I would argue the way of life, is mostly based on Vedic science. As such, the outcome expected is a function of the knowledge of the practitioner. This talk will explain the science behind three of the most commonly practiced rituals: daily puja, abhishek, and homa. To explain this, we have our speaker today, Professor P.R. Mukundji, who is a professor emeritus in engineering at the Rochester Institute of Technology in USA. He's also a keen student of Vedic science. He started an NGO called Tara Prakashana in 2006, which is focused on preservation and dissemination of Vedic knowledge. I welcome you, sir.
Namaste to all of you. At the outset, I would like to spend a few minutes actually talking about the title itself. One of the problems that we have is that a lot of Western scholars, I might say, who have looked at the Vedic way of life, they have tried to put a label on many of the things that we do. And in this, transformation from Sanskrita to English, sometimes some things are lost, and sometimes actually things are different and it's actually changed just because of the words that we use, right? So the title of the talk today is The Science Behind Hindu Rituals and Traditions. Well, let me start with science. You hear this all the time. People say, oh, many of the things we do is not scientific. And this is a very common, I have to tell you that being in the profession that I have been as an engineering professor for many decades, I come across young people in their 20s, many of them from India, and they themselves, these are the people who call themselves Hindus, right? they themselves come and tell me sometimes, oh, why should I do this? Because it's not scientific. So I always question them. I tell them that, look, I have 4 degrees in engineering. Okay, not science, but engineering. I don't know, done a lot of research projects, supervised a lot of PhDs. I've done all that. So don't teach me about the word science, okay? And don't tell me that somehow these two things are something orthogonal to each other. And people even ask me that. They said, how can you be an engineering professor and at the same time do all these things? How does it even make sense? See, that therein lies the preconceived notion that these things are orthogonal to each other. So I start with the science, the word science, and I ask these people, I say, what is your definition of science? Because you're the one who said it's not scientific. Okay, I'll tell you my definition later. But what is your definition of science? And more often than not, they're at a loss, and what they actually mean a lot of times is the Western material science. See, when they say it's not scientific, what they're talking about is that, oh, if you give them a concept, can I touch it? Can I see it? Because observation is very important in science. I admit that too. Observation is important. So now the question comes, is it something physically observable? So at the very outset, not that our people did not pay attention to material science, they did. But more so than that, they spent a lot of time and energy. This is over thousands of years. This is not, something I'm making up, right? So for many, many thousands of years, people studied very, very carefully. They looked into the science of energy. As we know, in the world, there is matter, there is energy. They are like two sides of the same coin, right? So the universe, the value of the universe is actually between what happens between energy on one side and matter on the other side. No matter without energy and no energy without matter, right? The two sort of go hand in hand. So when you talk about energy, the question is, when you if you look at a scientific principle related to energy, then we need to have as a starting point some kind of hypothesis. I come and say this is the way it is. Now, that may be true, that may not be true. So in science, what you do is you have to prove that it is true, or you have to prove that it's not true, right? So what for me to do that, if I have the required knowledge about the topic, I design an experiment which will prove either this way or that way, right? So this experiment should have an input or set of inputs, and on the other side, it has a set of outputs. So now the question is, when you look at the output based on a specific input, if my hypothesis is true, it'll give one output. If it's not true, it'll give a different output. So in this controlled experiment, if I try this experiment over and over and over again, tens of thousands of times, if the majority of the time I get the output that says, no, this is true, I accept it as a scientific fact, right? Until a new hypothesis comes along to prove otherwise. This is science. This is how science is done, right? So my claim is that before you say that something is not scientific, have you done this experiment? Have you tried it? Forget about tens of thousands of times. Have you at least tried 10 times to see what the outcome is? And if you have not done that, and if you don't know how to design this experiment, please do not come and say it's not scientific. So we need to go with this definition of science to start with, right? Secondly, we say Hindu. Hindu, as many of us know, is a more a regional, it came from Sindhu, people who were living along the Sindhu River, or Hindus. Like even now, if you go to Spain and places like that, they refer to Indians as Hindus. They don't mean anything religious. They just mean they're from this region, right? So it's not so much about Hindu, like she said, just a few minutes ago. Our traditions, our way of life is based in the Vedic knowledge. And that knowledge also has the science part, right? So if you look at Karma Kanda, for example, in the Vedas, it tells you, oh, you do this, you do that, and so on. Whatever that may be, depending on the ashrama we're talking about, one could be a brahmachari, one could be a grihastha, whatever stage in life you're at, there are certain karma that is defined, right? And what we're going to talk about today is basically three of them. And each one of them, by the way, we can talk for hours and hours. And unfortunately, we cannot go to the depth. So, what I'm going to give you is basically my understanding of the science behind some of these, I would call karma instead of ritual. Because a ritual is something you do sort of mechanically every day, right? This is not a ritual. This is Vaidika karma. So I would redefine this title and say that the science in Vaidika karma. Now, if that makes sense to you, Vaidika, I don't have to explain that. So let's talk about karma for just a minute, because there's a huge difference between karma and a ritual. So karma has three parts. These three parts, on one hand, you have the physical action, and then you have the speech, and the third one is your intention based upon jnana. So when I say I want to do something, I'll give you an example. I'm sitting in front of my laptop, right? So if I were to hit the keyboard and type something, right? Question is that karma or not? I'm sitting here just typing something on the keyboard. Well, it depends. The outcome depends upon whether I hit the keyboard or not, but do I understand what would happen if I hit certain keys in a certain sequence? So it's based upon knowledge, right? So the jnana, and again, I keep using these two words. Jnana is not exactly knowledge, it's much more than knowledge. But just today, we'll use that word as a substitute. Okay. So the knowledge behind the physical action, and the third component, of course, is the speech. So we call it, kaya, vacha, manasa. That's what, if you want to use Sanskrit words, right? So now, what has happened is that when I do something, whatever it might be, some Vaidika karma, when I do something, the speech is also important. So the mantra, see, I cannot take any word, right? Suppose I say, Jack and Jill went up the hill. Is that a mantra? Well, it's a set of words. So I sit here and keep saying that 1,000 times. Jack and Jill went up the hill. Jack and Jill went up the hill 10,000 times. Will that do anything? Probably not. Probably not. So what is the difference then between a Vaidika mantra and a set of words, just a set of random words? The difference is that when you look at that mantra, even the actual sounds are so carefully selected in a given sequence, when those frequencies, even if I don't know the meaning, a given set of frequencies, if it comes through my system, that in itself will do something, even if I don't know the meaning of what I'm saying. So Vaidika mantra, that's why it's called mantra, because it has effect on the mind. Manas, mantra, there's tantra, yantra, all these things. But mantra is something that has effect on the mind. Right? So when we in many Vaidika karma, we have certain mantra that goes along with certain action. And that's very important, by the way. So you cannot just randomly say something. Even the intonation is important. I said this so many times in other platforms that, like, for example, if you chant a Shanti mantra from the Vedas, from the Upanishads, right? At the end of each one of those things, they always says Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Or I can say Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It's not the same. It is not the same. So intonation is extremely important. The transition in a upward, I'm talking about frequency wise, transition in an upward and a downward in a given sequence that goes along with a certain sound is very important. The Omkara itself, the Bijakshara, Omkara, has 8 parts. It has 8 parts. And if you go all the way to the very end, the two last components of a Omkara is Shanti and Atishanti, right? So that you don't even hear. So if somebody chants Omkara properly, the final 2 parts in those 8 components of the Omkara, you don't actually even hear that, but it's there, right? So all of these things, the mantra is very important, the speech part is very important, the karya, the action is important, but most important is the jnana behind the person doing it. Just like, a computer scientist typing something on a computer can accomplish a lot more than some random person typing something randomly. Action is the same, but the results are very different. So if we accept all those things, if we say that, yeah, that makes sense, then let us look at 3 different things. This is just my what you call Pitika, introduction, right? So given that, let's look at 3 different components today briefly. The first one is daily puja. Billions of people every morning do what one might call puja. That varies from person to person. Some people may do detailed, there are 16 steps in the daily puja, right? And you may do that, you may not. But there are some things that are very common. For example, if you go to a temple, you see the Pujari ji there, the Archaka, he'll do certain things. For example, he may put arishina, that is turmeric, kumkum, sindoor. He may put a garland of mala, garland of flowers. He may put chandan, sandalwood paste, right? Dhupa, deepa, he may do arti. He may offer some naivedya, some food, and he may also do abhishek and give you tirtha, right? So some of these things, I just want to very briefly go one at a time and tell you why do we even do this? If you go to a temple, if you take a small child, and if you say, oh, take tirtha, take prasada, take arti. If the child says, why? You cannot just say, just do it. You say, why? The kid is asking a valid question, right? Why should I do it? Say, after all, if you stick your hand on top of fire, what does it do for you? Let's start with that arti. What we call Mangala Arati. Called Mangala Arati, right? So there is this murti in a temple, and the archaka, the priest, will go there, and first thing he does, if he does it properly, he will start at the feet of the murti, and he will take it all the way up to the head, and then he'll bring it down all the way to the feet again, and then he'll go clockwise 3 times. Okay, this is done properly. If the archaka knows what he's doing, that's what he does. So question is, why start at the feet? Why go towards the head? Why bring it down? And why go 3 times clockwise? And after doing all that, if you go and take the arti, what does it do for you? This is a question, and it's a very valid question, by the way. It's a very, very valid question, right? So let me briefly tell you what happens is that if you look at the Vedas, in all the Vedas, there is one sukta called Purusha Sukta. So in the Purusha Sukta, it clearly says, if you look at the Vishwa, the universe, as a place that embodies this Paratattva, which you may call, I don't like calling it God. Okay. So I'll say Bhagavan, you know. So by the way, there's a difference. See, this is another thing. This is where when people say that, oh, you worship multiple gods and all that. No, we don't actually worship only one God. But the thing is that the confusion comes when we use the word like Devata, Shakti, things like that. In English, there's only one word called God. Therein lies the problem. But anyway, let me not go there at a tangent. Let's come back to Arati. So it says that if you look at Vishwa as an embodiment where this Paratattva is completely pervading this entire universe, then you have to admit that you and I are a part of that. Right? So I live in the same universe, you live in the same universe. And so the question is, the manifestation of this Paratattva will happen in 4 different ways, which Sri Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita. And this is our Varnashrama. So if you look at the 4 Varnas, the feet, by the way, this is from Purusha Sukta, I'm just saying it, that's all. It says clearly in the Vedas that the feet it represents the Shudra Varna. Shudra Varna is basically service. And everything stands on that, just like my body and your body stands on our feet, right? So the feet, without feet, you cannot go anywhere, right? So for you to go anywhere, do anything, your feet are very important. And that is the Shudra Varna. So if you come up from the feet, if you come up, then you come to Uru, the middle part. That's Vaishya. Then if you come to the Bhuja, the shoulders represent strength, that is Kshatriya Varna, and the head represents the Brahmana Varna. So when they do the Aarti, they don't start from the head, they start from the feet. Okay? Telling you that the energy in this Vishwa, the energy of Vishnu in Vishwa, again in Mahabharata, if you look at Vishnu Sahasranama, as told by Bhishmacharya, it starts off as Vishvam Vishnu Vashatkaraha. That's how it starts. The very first word is Vishvam. Second word is Vishnu, Vashatkara. So the thing is that what we are looking at, that light represents jnana, it represents knowledge, wisdom. So when we take that arti from feet to the head and bring it down, we are looking at these 4 aspects in this universe of his manifestation. And then we go around 3 times clockwise, because every single thing I do, every karma that I do, like I said earlier, has 3 components: kaya, vacha, manasa. So anything I say, anything I do, anything I think, all of that actually will show you the luminous, the knowledge, basically, the jnana of that ultimate eternal being. So when you take that, and when you take that arti, when you put your hand on that thing, the hand, by the way, there is Devata Shaktis in this Sharira. In the hand is Indra, Devendra, who is the one controlling all the 5 Karmendriyas and 5 Jnanendriyas. So through him, I'm absorbing this energy, and that energy is for your mind. So when you take Mangalarati, it illuminates or it shines knowledge, jnana, in your mind. So that energy is actually for your mind. So when you look at the koshas, the layers in a sadhana sharira, the outermost is the Annamaya kosha, as we call it, the physical body. The next layer is Pranamaya kosha, the energy layer. The third one is Manomaya kosha. Then there are two more. So these three things that we do and we take is for these three layers. I'm starting from the inner layer, which is the Manomaya kosha. The arti is for that. Then they give tirtha. So tirtha, we take 3 times if done properly. But the tirtha, the water, the sanctified water, it is sanctified because they've done abhisheka with that, right? So that sanctified tirtha, when I take it, that directly affects your prana shakti, your energy. And I need energy, don't I? Because the energy is what is there between the mental layer and the physical layer. That energy layer is very important. Otherwise, you can be physically very fit, even mentally very strong, but you may not have the energy to do anything. So the energy layer, the pranamaya kosha, the prana shakti, which is the chalana shakti, which is the energy, is extremely, extremely important. So when I take tirtha, that enhances my pranamaya kosha, the energy in my being, in my body. And why do I take 3 times? Because when you get that energy, the question is, what are you going to do with it? You can misuse energy also. So what are you going to do with this energy? The thing is that the very first time you take that energy, to live a life, to live that kind of life that will go towards moksha. Secondly, this is personal. But that you cannot stop there. Because I live in this society, I take things from other people. So I'm a communal, I cannot live in isolation, right? So the second thing I take, I said that if you give me that energy, I'm also going to use that energy for doing dharma karya, for serving society. That's basically, in my definition, dharma basically means doing things for other people. So I will use it for dharma. And then what? Why the third time? Well, because I also have kama. I also have some desires, Some desires, I may say, I want this, I want that, I want to build a house, I want to do this, I want to do that. So everybody does, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that in terms of priority, this is my third priority. But I will use it for that also. I will also use it for that. Then we take prasada. So the archaka will offer some food, and then, again, some of you may do this every day. So I don't want to assume that you don't know what I'm saying. Probably you know more than me. I don't know that. But the point is that when you offer that, there's certain things we say. Say we Om Pranaya Swaha, Om Apanaya Swam, Vyanaya Swam, Udanaya Swam, Samanaya Swaha. Then you say Om Brahmane Swaha. So we are offering to this 5 forms of prana in that Brahma. And you go sit in front of Krishna and put some peda or something like that and say, Krishna, please take it. Krishna is not going to come and sit and eat all the peda, right? The peda is still there, you bring it home and eat it. But the thing is that when it turns into prasada is when you offer it. And our assumption that he accepted it. He just says, okay, tathastu, so be it. So that prasada, when you take it, that is something that is good for your physical body or annamaya kosha. So even the simple thing of going to a mandir, going to a temple and taking Mangalarati, taking Tirtha, and taking Prasada. There is a lot of quote unquote science behind it, right? Now, the question is, if I don't know this, what happens? Not much. Like you can take Tirtha, and the Pujari ji says, okay, here, take some Tirtha. I say, okay. And then give some sweet and say, okay, thank you. And then eat it. And, oh, this is very nice, very tasty. So it really is not, you're not accomplishing anything. So that's why I said that knowing what you're doing and why you're doing is so critical, because that is the one that will actually give you that desired outcome. So you want the energy? Sure. You want your physical body to be in good shape? Sure. I want my mind to be in a good shape? Of course. But I have to know what I'm doing, and the jnana is important. So let's look at another aspect of the puja vidhana. Again, I'm not looking at the 16 steps. That's detailed. Okay. So let's talk about mala. That is a flower garland. Right? So you put a flower garland. The question is, what's the point in that? Well, the thing is that mala, any mala, right, is a symbol. By the way, the Vaidika Sampradaya is full of symbolism and numerology also, right? So if you don't understand that, that's when it becomes a ritual, not karma, right? So, mala, every mala is a symbol of bandhana. I hope all of you know what that word means. It's I'm sort of like giving, for example, at the time of wedding, right? The groom and the bride, they exchange garland 3 times. Okay. First they'll wear it and they take it to put on the girl, and the girl takes what she's wearing, puts it on the boy, and so on. The same concept is the same. So when you take this mala and put it on Bhagavanta, and then you take it and put it on yourself, what exactly is going on here? Well, you're saying that I intentionally, I want bandhana. See, normally everybody wants to be free, right? But here I'm saying, give me bandhana. With what? With you. So I want bandhana with that divine entity. But what kind of bandhana? Well, just like this garland of flowers, the flower is soft and fragrant. Says, let the bandhana between you and me be as soft and fragrant as this mala. That's the kind of relationship I want. I want it to be very soft, nothing harsh. And I want it to be very fragrant. That is also, by the way, why the bridegroom and the bride exchange garlands. Same thing. Nobody tells people, so they just randomly put some garland and move on. But that's the thought behind it. Another thing that we use in our puja, and we do it at home also. You don't have to go to a temple, but at home also we do this. We put haldi, kumkum, and sindur. And in that order, by the way. You cannot put sindur first, then kumkum, then haldi. It's always haridra churnam samarpayami, kumkuma churnam samarpayami, sindhura churnam samarpayami. That's how the process, right? So the question is, what's with that? If I want to be a very efficient person, can I mix haldi, kumkum, and sindur all mixed together and do it just one time? I can save time, right? Instead of doing 3 times. No, you cannot do that. So the question is why? Why not? Okay. And the reason is that energy, again, remember right at the beginning I said the Vaidika Vijnana is Vijnana of energy, mostly. Okay. So just like matter, energy also has color. So haldi, uh, the yellow color, right? Turmeric is a disinfectant. Like if you have a cut or something, you put some turmeric on that, it'll, it's a disinfectant, right? Kumkum, the red color, represents kama, desire. Sindhur or saffron color represents vairagya. Okay? Just, just the way it is. That's why you see all these sannyasis wearing saffron clothes, because it represents vairagya. Now, haldi, there used to be a time, I remember in my own childhood, women always used to put haldi here and they put kumkum here, right? And they would put on both the cheeks, they put haldi. Uh, I don't see that much anymore when I visit Bharat, but that used to be the case. But anyway, let's come back to puja. So the thing is that when I put haldi, next time I'm going to put kumkum. So every time you do puja, you have some desire, you have some kama. You'll always ask for something. Always say, give me this, give me that. So the thing is that before I do that, see, I don't know the things that I ask for that may be good for me or bad for me. How do I know whether it's good or bad, right? Only I'll find out later. And later on, if he gives me something that I asked for, which I didn't like later on, he'll say, don't you know better just because I asked, why did you give it to me? You shouldn't have given it because you know better than me, right? Okay, I'm an idiot. I asked for something. That doesn't mean that you should give it. So the thing is that in the puja we offer this what we call mangala dravya. That's what it's called, mangala dravya. Haldi, kumkum, and sindur. So haridra churnam. When I first offer that, I'll say, look, I'm going to ask for something. I don't know if it's good or bad. So please, to start with, I want to make sure that there's nothing toxic that I ask for. Disinfectant. Okay. Start with, right? So I'm putting I'm putting the responsibility on him. I'll say that whatever desire I ask for, make sure it is disinfected. Okay. I don't want to regret it later. So, and then of course, kunkuma, the kunkuma churnam, the red powder represents kama. And then what if I ask, okay, let's look at this. Suppose I ask for something good. Suppose I say, give me jnana, give me knowledge. That's not a bad thing, right? And I say, please, please, and suppose he gives it to me. Then what could happen? Even something good, right? Even something good, I may get obsessed with it. I may get obsession. And the thing is, I don't want obsession with anything. It doesn't matter what. And that is the vairagya, that is the sindhura part. So when I offer this, what is called mangala dravya, haridra churnam, kunkuma churnam, sindhura churnam. The colors themselves will tell me, but I should think that in my mind when I offer it. Otherwise, you're just randomly putting some powder and you might as well mix everything and put it one time. So when you do it in that order, in my mind, I should be thinking about these things. I'll tell you just one more thing and then we'll move on to the next topic because I'm running out of time. Chandana, chandan, that is sandalwood paste. Right? So if you look at sandalwood paste, the way it is made, there's a rough stone. You take the piece of sandalwood, put a few drops of water, and by the way, even in that, people who do it properly will put a very, very, very tiny, small part of haldi, turmeric. And then you go grind. Put some water, keep doing that, and eventually you get a paste. So you take that paste, put it on the murti, your object of devotion, worship, and then you take it, put it on yourself. Okay, this is the process. So what's going on here? Well, the thing is that sandalwood piece represents this sharira. That stone on which I try to take the paste, right? That represents the platform on which I do my karma. For example, I was a professor. My university was my platform. I do dharma karya with my family. That's my platform. And so on, right? So this bhumi, I don't mean Mother Earth. Ultimately, yes, but we all have our own little bhumis in which we operate. The platform on which we function, the thing is, I work 8 hours, 10 hours every day, right? Until you retire. You keep working. Every morning you go there. Most of your day you spend there. Right? So you work hard, So that water represents Rajasa Manobhava. There's Sat, Rajas, and Tamas. So the Rajasa Manobhava, and it is for that enjoyment and, having fun and all that. I work to earn money, isn't it? So I work every day, keep doing that. But the Chandan represents the outcome of that should be as fragrant as Chandan. And I take that and also put it on him and say, even that I'm offering to you. So all the results of my karma, whatever I do, yes, I'm doing it because I want to get a paycheck at the end of the month. I want to enjoy. Yeah, that's all true. But that output, I'm offering it to you. Only then I will take it and put it on myself. So that even this so-called enjoyment and all these things in life, that also to other people is as fragrant as that Chandan. So wherever we go, whatever we do, the outcome of that karma should be something fragrant to society. See how much meaning is there in all this. Amazing, isn't it? But if we turn this into rituals, where we just do something randomly, it doesn't have the desired effect. Agnikarya, or what you may call Homa. This is very important for us. People used to, if you go back 2000 years, 3000 years, or something like that, you go to some temple, the Sthala Purana, they'll say, oh, this temple was built in Treta Yuga and things like that, right? But in reality, I could be wrong, but in reality, this concept of a temple is just 1,000+ years old. But maybe 2,000 years old. I don't think it is 10,000 years old. But whether I'm right or wrong, I may be wrong. But one thing is true, that this I know is to be true, which is that traditionally, we used different icons to represent Bhagavanta. One was the sun, Surya. So when you do Gayatri Japa and all that, you look at Surya Mandala Madhyastha, the place from where all the energy is coming for my life. The light is coming, the energy is coming. So I look at the center of that and say, where is all that energy coming from? Not the physical sun, but in that's why we say Surya Mandala Madhyastha. Right? So that source, that Bhagavanta, that infinite source, that's giving me this energy. So that's one icon. Another was through Agni. Agni is the interface between us and the Devta Shaktis. It's like an interface. It's a different world. Okay? So why Agni? Well, because it's always Urdhva Mukha. It's always going upwards. Secondly, anything you offer in that, anything will get purified. Anything. Whatever you offer will be purified. And what is left is that, in English, you may call it ash. We call it Vibhuti, Visishta Bhuti, Vibhuti. You know what Bhuti means? Something that will take you upwards. So when you offer everything to this ultimate source of purification, and we may say, oh, I do Gana Homa. I said, okay, please take this and give it to Ganapati. I may do Durga Homa, Sudarshana Homa, whatever, right? So it's an interface, and Agni Devata is the interface that will take that, purify everything, and take that and offer it to wherever it has to go. We used to do this every day. People used to do Agni Karya at the middle of the day. They won't eat lunch without doing that. But again, we have given up these things. But I want to tell you a few minutes about Panchamrita Abhisheka. In Panchamrita Abhisheka, we use, as the word, it's a complex word, but as it says, Pancha Amrita Abhisheka. There are three parts, right? Pancha Amrita Abhisheka. Pancha, all of you know what means five, right? Panch, Pancha, five. Amrita, Amrita. Usually, look up in Google, it'll say nectar. Look at the nirvachana of that Samskrita pada. Mrita, Mrita means something that will change form. Amrita means something that will never change form. That's what Amrita means, right? Something that will never change form. Pancha, Amrita, Abhisheka. Right? So, if you start with milk, Gomata is symbolic of Vedamata. So, just like Gomata gives me milk, why does Gomata give milk? More than what the calf needs. There's leftover, that's what I drink, right? Similarly, Vedamata will give this Vaidika Jnana that is meant for the Devatas, but there's leftover for you and me also. Okay? So, milk to start with. I do Abhisheka with that. Abhisheka, that means I'm offering it. So, any Vaidika Jnana that I may be fortunate enough to learn from my Guru, however little, I offer it to them. Start with. So that I don't get arrogant. See, otherwise, jnana is other things, like Yudhishthira said, youth will go away, good looks goes away, money goes away, relationships go away, everything will go away, but the jnana remains. So when a jnani, the biggest danger for a jnani is jnana itself. So he should not become arrogant, he should be very humble. And say, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. Why? Because the amount of jnana yet to be obtained is infinite. So however much I may know, if you take a ratio to infinity, it's any number divided by infinity is zero. And therefore, however much I may know, if you ask me how much do you know, I'll say nothing. I don't know anything. Compared to what is yet to be learned as a ratio, right? So that humility is important. So we offer that, right? And secondly, we offer dadhi, that is yogurt. I don't know what, curds, right? So the question is, how does milk turn into that? How does milk become, in this, I live in the US, here we call yogurt and maybe you can call curds, right? Dadhi, that's a, so the question is, how does milk turn into curds? You boil it, first you boil it, let it cool down. You take a drop from yesterday, put it in that, stir it, let it stay, and you look at it tomorrow morning, it's become curds, solid. And it tastes different too, by the way. Its properties are different. So this Vaidika Jnana, heating means application. I see there is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So first you hear. You cannot stop there. Manana, contemplation. And you also have to apply that in life every day. So when you're raising the heat, raising energy means that you do manana, contemplate on whatever you have learned and apply it. You keep doing that, right? And then after you do that, you let it cool down. You do that, leave it alone for a while. And then putting yesterday's drop of yogurt in that. By the way, why do we do that? Because we boil the milk, because anything unwanted toxics will go away. That's why here, when you do manana, any unwanted things, it'll all go away, right? Get rid of unwanted stuff. Now you have this clean jnana, right? To that, you add yesterday's yogurt, and that yesterday's yogurt, what is that? Well, that is Upadesha from my Guru. My Guru is yesterday. So whatever he has done, and there's a parampara there. There's a lineage, right? So from that, somebody asked once, So if every day we have to add yesterday's yogurt to make yogurt, where did the first yogurt come from? From Bhagavanta, that's all. He's the Adi Guru, right? So yesterday's knowledge, yesterday's jnana, when your guru gives mantra upadesha, he gives you that upadesha, just one mantra, one guru, one mantra. So when you add that thing and stir it with your knowledge, let it be, after some time, you get solidified knowledge. And how do you get butter out of that? Right? You do mathana, right? Apply, keep doing that. And then magically the butter will come out. But that butter also has Rajasa and Tamasic components in there. So this butter represents bhakti, Nija bhakti. When you apply that, you get Nija bhakti. But even that has Rajasa, Tamasic components. So what do we do with butter? We heat it up again. All the water component will go away. All the sedimentation will come to the bottom. Then you filter it. That is ghee, isn't it? You do the same thing with your bhakti. Then your Rajasic and Tamasic components will go away. Whatever is left, that it is what is used in Abhisheka. Those are the three things, first three things: milk, yogurt, and ghee. There are two more: sugar, and honey. There are two things. If you look at sugar, where does sugar come from? Sugar cane. And if that is what you call a vanaspati. See, it will live only one time, that's all. Okay. And so you pick up the sugar cane, you grind it and not grind it, squeeze it and all that, you get the juice and sugar comes from that. So my life is the only purpose is to give sweetness to others. There's no other goal here. So every time I get a janma, I get this sadhana sharira. If you squeeze that, all it gives is sweetness to other people. That sweetness is also amrita. Lastly, honey, madhu. Right? Madhu, if you know how you get madhu, there is the bees, the worker bees will go collect so-called nectar from the flowers and it will offer in the hive and then it drips. Similarly here, every person with a sadhana sharira, that includes you and me. See, we do random things, don't we? See, everything we do is not sattvic. Give me a break. If you say, I do only sattvic stuff, I say, you're lying. That's not true. So we all do something rajasic, we do something tamasic also, by the way, right? We may not want to admit it, but we do. If you're honest, you'll admit it. If you're not honest, you'll say, no, I don't do anything tamasic. But the thing is that every single karma of mine has a sattvic component, a rajasic component, a tamasic component. These devata shaktis that are inside this sharira, my karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, and even beyond the manas, controlled by Garuda, Rudra, Shiva, and Shesha. So all these devata shaktis, they're looking at every single karma that is done through this body. They'll extract, just like a bee extracts the nectar from the flower. In every single one of us, they extract that sattvic component, just the sattvic component, and offer it to him. Once that is offered there, after some time, that becomes madhu. And it drifts on us. That is both medicinal, it's very sweet. And so I'm saying that all my karma, let all these devata shaktis, please offer it there and let it drip on me. on this Bada Jiva, on this poor soul. Let it drip. So that it gives me that madhu, that sweetness in life. So these are the 5 things we do Panchamrita Abhisheka, and then we take that. By the way, that's one of the most nutritious things that you can drink. Like if you drink 1 glass of Panchamrita, you can skip a meal. It doesn't matter. It has everything you need in it. Lastly, just a few minutes, very, very quick thing. When we do Homa, Agni, I already told you, Agni purifies everything. We offer different things in it, but most important thing we offer is ghee. But also equally important is the mantra that goes with it, right? And when we do that, the interesting thing is that when you perform a Homa, I started doing that a few years ago. I don't know the exact number, but close to 500 homas myself. And when you do that, I know from experience, from Anubhava, I know that in that environment, very good energy is created. Very good energy. Not just where you're doing it, but I don't know, some 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer radius, very good energy is created. Everybody who comes there feels good. Right? So this is something I wish in our Samaja. See, it's easy to talk, like if you say, come and give a talk in Sangam talks, it's easy. I just come sit and talk for an hour and say okay, goodbye. But to live a life, live this life, it takes commitment. It takes commitment. It takes energy. Not much money, by the way. You don't need much money at all. Like in India, when I do Homa, do you know how much I spend? Not even 500 rupees. All of us can afford 500. Samit, what we use, that is the twigs from Ashwathamara. It costs nothing. 20, 25 rupees, they give me a bundle. Darbe, all these things. This very, very, it costs nothing. The most expensive thing is a ghee. 1 packet of ghee is all you need. There's some 300 rupees or something, right? So no big deal. It's learning how to do that, making that commitment, and doing it properly. Doing it properly. You don't need people. You don't have to have a big social function or something. Sit quietly in your room. I sit in my puja room at home and do that, right? So I know I'm sort of skipping that because I'm run out of time. So I just wanted to say that's another thing. There's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of science. I have to tell you one incident and then I'll stop. One of the places where I was invited a few years ago to talk about the science of Homa, Agnikarya, right, was in Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. The Samskrita department invited me and I gave a talk on the science of Agnihotra. I tell you, that's one of the best discussions I've had. There are PhD scholars, there are faculty, and we had such a very polite and respectful dialogue, right? And normally, when I think of JNU, I would not have expected that, but that's one of the nicest things I've done. So I talked about this at different places. Many of these talks are on YouTube, by the way, if you're interested, but maybe some other day we can talk about it. I just want to thank Ojasvi ji who arranged this thing, and Sangam Talks in general, and some of you are listening. Thank you very much. If you heard something that is good, useful, the credit goes to my gurus. If I said something stupid, it's my fault. So with that, I'll end. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste, Mukundji. I was just asking, you started off by saying about, the science and how people question initially that, what you can see with your senses can be experimented, said number of times. That is people's view of science. And then you have explained about the different practices we do. So if generally people can be very hard-nosed when it comes to science, and they'll say, well, these practices that you explain and explain the reason behind it, I still don't see it as science. How would you explain that to them? Because for me, I'm not hard nosed. So I can listen to things and recognize that I am of a certain level, things are subtler, and that when I get to that level, more of it will make sense beyond what you have said. But people generally can be very stubborn. How would you explain that to them? Thank you.
Well, in the first place, when people ask a question, I'm not talking about you, these so-called hard-nosed people, as you put them. A lot of times you can ask a question because you actually want to know the answer. You want to learn. So that's one thing. Some other people do it just to criticize you or make you look bad, right? They'll ask questions like, why did Krishna have so many girlfriends? What kind of God is he? And things, the random things. By the way, there's answers for all that. But the point is that it depends on, if somebody is already convinced of something, it's very difficult to change them. And I would say that if you look at the mental process, right? So, for example, right now you heard something. What I say may be good, bad, ugly, right, wrong. You don't know, right? I mean, I'm sincerely saying things with the belief that it is correct. So you get that thing. Once you get that thing, you see something, you hear something, you touch something, and so on, taste something, smell something. All of this goes to your mind, and that is where all that data gets merged together. And the mind will ask a question: is this true? The answer to that comes from what we call buddhi, the intellect, which is the next layer. The question is, the buddhi, when it decides something, where did it get the rules from to say something is right or wrong? It can get it from outside, or it can get it from inside. So what we call chitta is a place where all your anubhava, not just this janma, but forever, is stored there. So when the things as what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false, and so on, those rules, when it comes from your own anubhava inside, you're not depending on outside. But today, people are so lazy, they don't want to even go that far. Immediately they'll Google or do some random thing or listen to some YouTube lecture or something like that, right? So other people are telling them what is right and what is wrong. So when you fall for that, and then people with agendas, right? There's their own agenda. I'm not saying it need not be a bad agenda. It can be a good agenda also, but people have agendas. That's true. So when the buddhi, when a person is young, is still very soft. It is getting formed. But after 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it hardens. And it's very difficult to change that. So I don't think that we can actually go change other people. Because Satya, somebody asked me once, who said, if you ask a question, you get an answer. So the more questions you have, the more answers you get. Actually, that in my experience, that's not true. What I find is that there are people who have questions, there are people who have answers, and of course there are people who have neither. That's a different thing. But when you ask a question, you get an answer, but that will lead to two more questions. You try to get answers, you get more. So next thing you know, you're full of questions, right? But in reality, we have to see the truth. So the goal is not to get answers to questions. The goal is to see the truth inside. So all these questions and answers and all that is only getting ready for that, seeing the truth. So you or I cannot actually make somebody else see the light, see the truth. We cannot do that. But we can answer questions and say, look, this is the answer I have. It may seem right to you, it may seem wrong to you, but this is my anubhava. But when that person, if he's an actual seeker, actually seeking the truth, with blessings from a guru, he will see that he or she will see the truth inside. That's my answer.
I have one question for Mukundji. Mukundji, like the kind of wokeism kind of environment that is going around in the schools, and especially the younger kids who are getting addicted to the kind of propaganda material that is in circulation. So, how do you suggest how a Sanatani should preserve the kind of negative impressions that are being projected on the kids' mind? Because most of the time I've seen like people are even very skeptical to have the Raksha Sutri even. In the mandir, I have seen some of the mothers, they were having the Raksha Sutra, but they were telling Panditji not to give the Raksha Sutra to the kid because the school teacher will say something. So what should be the ideal way for the Sanatani to like give it to the next generation? Thank you. And second, one, because I've been following your videos on YouTube, just one, if that will be of great help if you can give the kind of sources where we can further our knowledge. Thank you. Thank you in advance.
Mohiji, there are actually multiple questions in what you asked. One is, how do we actually have an impact on younger people? Maybe our own children, or they don't have to be children also, younger people. And secondly, how do you deal with, like, what they do in schools and so on, right? And the third thing, of course, you asked about the sources. I'll try. So let me answer the first question first. My experience has been that, I left Bharat 49 years ago. And I've lived in America for 49 years. I came 49 years. 1974 is when I came here. And I've raised a family. I have 2 children. I have 4 grandchildren. And my children, born and raised in this country, people get freaked out when they see them because they balance the culture here extremely well with Sanatana Dharma. Extremely well. You will see that they have taught, even the youngest grandchild I have is only 2 years old. Even that little baby, 2-year-old girl, when she finishes a bath, she has to come to the puja room. She has to take tirtha, she has to take prasada. And if I'm there, I do puja. They all sit, they just quietly sit. Right? And why do they do that? Well, because their parents do that. So children don't do something because we tell them. They do it because they observe what we do. And sometimes they want to know, why are you doing this? And we should have answers for that. I never forced my children to do anything. I told them, if you want to come, if you don't want to, it's up to you. But the thing is that my 2 girls, they're grown up women now. But, like for example, just one example I can tell you. Every single day they chant Vishnu Sahasranam. They know it by heart. At the same time, if you look at them outside, one is a professor in a university, other is a lawyer. So you look at them outside, you will never know that this woman will be doing all this at home. They do Tulsi Puja, and the reason for that is they know the advantage from that. They've experimented, they get benefit from that. So every single young person looks at return on investment. Okay, ROI is very important. So if you say, I spend 1 hour, do this, that's what is the return on investment? You show them that, they'll try, and I'll give you another example. Forget about my children. Like I said, I've been a professor, right? So I constantly come across young people. In the last 25, 30 years, in the university where I used to teach, I just retired a few months ago, we have an interfaith chapel, right? Friday, 4 to 5 o'clock, I would go give a talk. No puja gija, nothing, just a talk, like what I'm doing now, on different aspects of Sanatana Dharma and Vedika Jnana. So many of these people, they come from all parts of India with different, communities. It doesn't matter, right? They try it, and when they see the benefit, they become almost fanatical about it. And they completely change their lifestyle, completely, right? Totally. I can show you many, many, many examples of that. Not just that, I also have to tell you one. So there is one young man, student, former student, this is about 10 years ago or something. He's from Qatar. And he's raised in the Islamic tradition. So one day he came to me, he was looking very sad. He actually came to ask me a question about some electronics thing. That's my field. So, but he's looking very sad. So I said, why are you looking so sad? Are you okay? He said, Professor, actually, no, I'm not okay. I said, why? What's the problem? So he told me something personal. I said, look, I'm an engineering professor. You came here to ask me engineering question. My job is to answer that question, that's all. But having said that, I'm also a teacher. So can I suggest something to you, which are you willing to try to solve that problem? He said, of course. I told him something that comes directly from one of the shlokas in Bhagavad Gita. Except I did not tell him it's from Bhagavad Gita. I said, this is the answer. Go try it. So he tried it, it worked. So he came to me and he said, Professor, can I ask you for a small favor? I said, what? Can I come here every Friday afternoon? For about half an hour, will you teach me something like this? I said, sure. This young man, without knowing that it's all from Bhagavad Gita, learned Bhagavad Gita, never talked about Krishna, not one Samskrita word. And he is so committed, even to this day, he's in touch with me. And he says, the things that you taught me is helping me my whole life and everything. So we, as grown-up people, first we have to learn. We have to understand. And we have to be humble also. Not saying that, look, you young person, you are stupid. No, nobody is stupid. Okay? Nobody is stupid. People can be ignorant, but they're not stupid. There's a difference between stupidity and ignorance. And we are ignorant too about so many things. So he said, look, I don't know much, but I know very little. I know a little bit. I've tried. It works. Can I share it with you? So it depends on how you present it. When you mandate it and say, no, you do this, the first chance they get, they'll run away from that. Your second question about schools and the environment. We always say satsanga is very important, right? So the thing is that whether you look at a school, I think one of the biggest tragedies, in my opinion, is today when I come to Bharat, I notice that my own friends, we are good friends. They're good people. They're very good people. But the thing is that when I talk in my mother tongue, which is Kannada, I'm from Karnataka, when I talk in it, they'll always reply, not all, but many of them will always reply back in English. You see, it's a mindset, it's a mindset that we have. And especially with children, parents talk only in English. There are children, I know, teenagers, who don't know any Indian language properly. They talk only in English, man. And that's what they encourage. The parents encourage that, the teachers encourage that. And every language is a abhivyakta, that is external manifestation of a way of thought, of a culture, right? When you take away that expression, you're taking away that culture. So the first thing we do, forget about schools and all these things. Please, whatever you speak, it may be Hindi, Oriya, or whatever. So whatever your mother tongue is, please talk to your children in your language, because that itself will give them culture. The language will give them culture, just the language itself. Sometimes you have no choice, I said this at my last Sangam talk also. I said, I honestly wish, I honestly wish that I knew Hindi well. See, my level of Hindi, I can only talk to taxi drivers and all that, that's it. Right? So I cannot give talks and all that, unfortunately. But I wish I could, because I can express myself much, much better in any Indian language than I can in English. So I think that schools and all that forget about it, right? But if we tell the children, we should not be telling the children, oh, don't put I live in America. I go to university and teach. So nobody minds. I don't. By the way, if they look, there are people putting weird tattoos on their bodies, putting ring in their tongue and all these things. Okay. So if I have a string on my hand, what's your problem? So we have to first have pride in what we do, not be ashamed of it. Why should I be ashamed? Why? If I put tilka or something, why should I be ashamed? Wear a dhoti. I walk around in dhoti. It happened to me once in Bangalore, in there's an area called JP Nagar. I was gone somewhere, I was wearing a dhoti. I worked for a short time in India, a long time back. The managing director of that company lives on the street. He was going for a walk, wearing some Adidas suit and all those things with a dog and all. He ran into me. He stared at me and said, "Aren't you Mukund?" I said, "Yes, sir." Here, Mr. Sulak. He said, "Oh, I thought you went to America." I said, "I did. I'm just here on a visit for 1 month." So he looked at me up and said, "How come you're dressed like this?" I said, "Sir, this is my native dress. I'm telling a guy in Bangalore." So we should not be ashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We should be ashamed of ourselves. So once we get over that, I have a feeling that confidence. By the way, I see that rising in Bharat. I'm very happy to see on one hand you have all these people, the English-speaking people, but there's also lots of people who are taking an interest in our dharma, in our way of life. And one person in a community is enough. One person in community who does this is enough. You're not going to change everybody.
My question is, sir, something that you said that if you had time, you will discuss, which is the difference between God and Bhagwan. Because, like you just said, that linguistics itself come with a culture. So, what is the difference between it, and how understanding a lot of these Hindu or Indian concepts in English can often be a disservice to understanding itself?
Yeah, that's actually complicated. Well, let me just tell you, when you ask a teacher or a professor a question, if that person says, "That's a very good question," you know what that means? He doesn't have a very good answer. So the question is question, but I will try. I will try my best. If somebody says, use the word God, suppose. See, we have started using uh, expressions in English. For example, let us say you hear the news somebody passed away or something. People in Twitter, they put RIP, things like that, right? Now, and there are many, many things like that. This word God represents some divine entity, that's all. Something divine, something that is above me, something that I cannot wrap around, something that I cannot see, touch, feel. That is what normally people refer to as quote unquote God. Now, our concept is different. If you look at the Vedas, they say that Veda Purusha means, Pura means like a town, city, right? So Purusha is someone who is indweller of something. So when you say Veda Purusha, is the indweller in the Vedas. Now, what are the Vedas? The Vedas, of course, the current version that we have given by Veda Vyasa 5,000 years ago roughly. But does it mean that there were no Vedas before? Vedas were always there. Because the true definition of Veda is the collection of truths eternal truth that is applicable to all people at all time. In other words, there is no limitation of desha or kala. Okay? Desha means space, kala means time. So there is no concept of that. I mean, there's no limitation of that. Right? So if you collect all of those truths, the one indweller of that is that Veda Purusha, that Bhagavanta. Why do we have so many words? Like, we have Sahasranamavali, for example. I told you a little while ago in my talk, I briefly referred to Vishnu Sahasranama, right? If you look at that, Vishwam Vishnu Vashatkaraha Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu, Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu, right? So we are looking at different aspects of that entity because I know that I cannot grasp infinity. As a finite person, I cannot grasp infinity, but I can look at multiple facets of it. So every word that we use, I'll give you another example. For the same entity, sometimes we say Shiva, sometimes we say Rudra. He's one of the Rudras, Maharudra, right? So I cannot club everything to say God. Okay, I cannot do that because Shiva, just like word Shiva means Pavitra, the purest of the pure. That's what that word means. Because you see, in Sanskrita, we have Nirvachana, etymology. So you can take any word, break it up, look at the Dhatpata, the root meaning, and you can understand what that means. God, the word God has no Nirvachana, no etymology. Whereas I can look at any of these 1008 names and I can learn something about that. Right? So to club it all together and say God, like I cannot tell my children or grandchildren and say, have faith in God. That's okay, thank you very much, and walk off. but the thing is, if I tell them all these different aspects, right? Vishwam, if you just take that word Vishwam, universe. Why is that a word for Bhagavan? Because he's all Vishnu, he is all pervasive, he's present everywhere. He's all knowing, Sarvajna. He's all knowing. And he's also all powerful. See, when you look at these things, you can learn so much from every pada, every word, right? So I think it's very important that we stop using that word God. Especially, it's even worse if you say gods. So you say, we worship all gods. What the heck does that mean? Ganapati, for example, Ganapati is Akasha Devata. His Abhimana is on Akasha. Akasha is space filled with energy. He removes obstacles. Why? Why? Because I'm here, you're there, and something has to happen between you and me. If that thing has to happen successfully with no obstacles, there has to be Akasha between you and me. Otherwise, there will be obstacles. So where there is space filled with good energy, there can be nothing else. And therefore, he is the remover of obstacles. We have to look at the Ojasvi, we have to look at the meaning of every name. Like if you say Ganapati means chief of the Gana. Say, what Gana? Which Gana? Rudra Gana. See, we have to, everything, I mean, this is my message to young people like you, okay? Which is that don't, the surface level thing, go a little deeper. Manana, think just a little bit. If somebody says Ganapati, says, what does that mean? Which Gana? Which Pati? When you do that, you learn so much. Just from that, you learn so much. And you'll have answers to all these idiots who come and say random things. No, seriously. And you give them start and give answer. In no time, they'll just shut up and walk away. This happened to me so many times. See, I don't go around, when I deal with people, I cannot just go around and blabbering all these things. I don't ask people, my family or my friends. I just keep quiet. I'm just an ordinary person. I just keep quiet. But if somebody asks or somebody comes and pokes, they'll get an answer. Right? In no time at all, they have no idea what to do. They just walk away. Right? So jnana is important. Every single day, I should know something which I did not know yesterday. Every day. Because we all have limited time. Right? So we cannot waste it. So every single day learn something. And by the way, that also requires humility. See, water will always, it can come from a mountain, right? Where will the water go? Only where there is a concave area, right? Ojasvi, I don't think you can relate to this, but I'll tell you something. I'm an old guy, right? I'll tell you something from when I was your age. Okay. See, we'd go walking, we'd go cycle trips and all that, right? So the thing is, we'd get thirsty. There are no water bottles and all that in those days. So you go somewhere on the roadside somewhere, there is this pump kind of thing, right? So you pump that, water comes and you. I always say that if you're thirsty, what did you have to do? You have to bend down. You cannot stand there and say, let the water come to my mouth. Okay. You have to bend down, hold your mouth, and then hold your hands and then drink it. Knowledge, jnana is like that. You bend down, learn to bend. I think mental arthritis is a much more severe problem than physical arthritis.